I've spent decades watching two types of people, those who build wealth and those who don't. And I've come to a startling conclusion. It's not about how much money they make. Two people can earn the same income and end up in completely different financial situations. One becomes wealthy, one stays broke. The difference isn't talent. The difference isn't luck. The difference is mindset. Specifically, how they think about money at the most fundamental level. Today, I'm going to show you the 7 differences between how rich people think about money and how poor people think about money. And here's what will surprise you. Most of these differences are invisible. You can't see them by looking at someone. You can't measure them on an IQ test. They operate below conscious awareness, but they compound into drastically different financial outcomes. The reason I'm telling you this is simple. Mindset is the one thing you can change today. You don't need permission from anyone. You don't need money to start with. You don't need a new job or a lucky break. You just need to understand how rich people think and then start thinking that way. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what separates the wealthy from everyone else. And more importantly, you'll understand which of these differences you're currently getting wrong. Because most people are getting at least 5 of these completely backward. This is the foundational difference. Everything else builds on this. Rich people think in decades. Poor people think in days, weeks, maybe months. This changes everything about how you make decisions. A poor person sees a stock drop 15% and thinks about the loss they'll experience today. They panic. They sell at the bottom. A rich person sees a stock drop 15% and thinks about where it will be in 30 years. They ignore the noise. They might even buy more because the price is lower. This isn't about bravery. It's about time horizon. A poor person gets a bonus and thinks, "What can I buy this week?" A rich person gets a bonus and thinks, "How will this compound over the next decade?" One decision gets you temporary pleasure. The other gets you permanent wealth. The mathematical difference is staggering. Let me prove this to you. Imagine 2 people both get a $5,000 bonus. Person A thinks short term. They spend it on a vacation, a new watch, or a car upgrade. Gone in a week. Back to zero. Person B thinks long term. They invested in an index fund earning 10% annually. In 1 year, that $5,000 becomes $5,500. In 5 years, it becomes $8,052. In 20 years, it becomes $34,450. In 30 years, it becomes $87,248. Same bonus, same starting point. Different time horizons. $87,248 difference. That's the power of thinking in decades instead of days. But here's what most people don't understand. Thinking in decades is a choice. It's not something you're born with. It's not something that requires genius-level intelligence. It's a choice you make every single day. Every time you get money, you choose your time horizon. Every time you're tempted to make an emotional financial decision, you choose your time horizon. The wealthy simply make the long-term choice more often, and they make it consistently for decades. Here's what's fascinating. The poor person doesn't enjoy their vacation more. They don't get more happiness from their watch. The gratification is identical, but the long-term cost is catastrophic. This is why poor people often feel like they're working harder than rich people, but getting nowhere. They are literally sacrificing their future for identical pleasure in the present. The wealthy realized long ago that the short-term sacrifice is worth it because the long-term gain is so much larger. They've trained their brains to see decades ahead instead of days ahead. When you understand this difference, you realize that becoming wealthy isn't about earning more money. It's about becoming capable of thinking longer into the future. A garbage collector who thinks in decades will become wealthier than a surgeon who thinks in days. It's that simple. Here's where most personal finance advice gets it completely wrong. The poor person's goal is to have money. The rich person's goal is to use money to buy assets that produce income. This sounds similar, but it's fundamentally different. When money is your goal, you try to accumulate it. You hoard it. You're afraid to spend it because you might lose it. You keep it safe in a bank account. You feel good about seeing the number grow. But you're not actually using it for anything. You're just playing a numbers game. When money is a tool, you see it completely differently. You're not trying to accumulate money. You're trying to accumulate assets that generate income. The money is just the medium you use to acquire those assets. A poor person saves $50,000 and feels accomplished. They have $50,000. Rich person takes $50,000 and asks, what productive asset can this buy? Can it buy a rental property? Can it buy a business? Can it buy land that will appreciate? Can it buy skills that increase my earning power? The poor person's goal was to have the money. The rich person's goal was to deploy the money productively. And this creates radically different outcomes. Let me show you what happens over time. Poor person saves $50,000, feels proud, leaves it in a bank account earning 0.5%. After 20 years, it's worth about $55,000 in nominal terms, but only $37,000 in purchasing power. Rich person invests $50,000 in a rental property. After 20 years, the property is worth $150,000. He's collected $180,000 in rental income. Even accounting for expenses, that's probably $80,000 net. Total value created, $230,000 versus $37,000. But here's what's really interesting. The rich person didn't accumulate that money. He deployed it. He used money as a tool to build something. The poor person was trying to accumulate money and ended up poorer. This difference in mindset changes how you earn, how you save, and most importantly, how you deploy what you've saved. A rich person hears about a business opportunity and thinks, "Can I use money to acquire ownership of this?" A poor person hears the same opportunity and thinks, "That's risky. I'll keep my money safe." The rich person is thinking about what that money can do. The poor person is thinking about protecting the money itself. One mindset builds wealth. The other protects against loss. You can't do both. You have to choose. Are you trying to accumulate money or deploy it productively? That choice determines everything. I've noticed something remarkable. The richest people I know think about money the least. They don't obsess over their account balances. They don't count their money. They think about the assets those funds can acquire. They think about the businesses they can build. They think about the income streams they can create. Money is literally just the scorecard. The game is about creating productive assets. This is why poor people often feel like money is evil or corrupting. They're treating it as a goal rather than a tool. When money is your goal, it's stressful. You never have enough. You always want more. You're constantly worried about losing it. When money is a tool, you can relax. You have enough if you can deploy it productively. The tool itself doesn't matter. What you build with it matters. This is subtle, but it creates massive differences in risk tolerance and decision-making. Rich people understand probability. They understand that nothing is certain. They understand that life is a series of bets. Poor people are obsessed with certainty. They want guarantees. They want safety. They want to know that nothing bad will happen. This fundamental difference affects every financial decision. A poor person won't invest because they could lose money. The possibility of loss terrifies them. They want certainty. A rich person invests because they understand that the probability of long-term growth is very high, even though short-term loss is possible. The poor person sees the loss possibility and decides investing is too risky. The rich person sees the probability of 30-year growth at 10% annually and decides not investing is too risky. Same situation, opposite conclusions. Because they're thinking about different things. The poor person thinks, what if I lose money? The rich person thinks, what if I don't invest and miss 30 years of compound growth? Both are legitimate concerns, but only one leads to wealth. Let me explain how rich people actually think about probability. They've learned from studying history and statistics that stock markets have returned about 10% per year over the long term. They've dropped 20% about once every few years. They've dropped 30% maybe once a decade. Catastrophic drops happen maybe once every 50 years. So the rich person calculates, if I invest for 30 years, what's the probability of coming out ahead? The answer is over 95% over any 30-year period in history. That's not certainty, but it's very high probability. So they invest. They don't try to be certain. They bet on probability. And over 30 years, probability compounds into something that looks like certainty. Meanwhile, the poor person wanted certainty. Certainty that they wouldn't lose money. So they kept cash. And they got certainty of something worse. Certainty of losing 3% per year to inflation. They traded uncertain loss for certain loss just to feel safe. This is the most expensive psychological trade most people make. Here's what makes this particularly interesting. Both people took a risk. The poor person thought they were being safe by not investing, but they were actually taking the biggest risk of all, the risk that inflation destroys their purchasing power. That's a guaranteed loss if you hold cash for 30 years. The rich person thought they were taking a risk by investing, but they were actually being safe by betting on historical probability. Probability has been proven to work for 100 plus years. It's more trustworthy than certainty because certainty often doesn't exist. This comes down to how you frame risk. Poor people see risk as what if this bad thing happens. Rich people see risk as what are the long-term probabilities and what's the worst outcome I can live with. One frame leads to paralysis. The other leads to calculated decisions. A poor person won't start a business because they might fail. The failure rate for businesses is maybe 50%. That's scary. A rich person starts a business because the probability of learning something valuable is 100%. And the upside, if it succeeds, could be millions. The failure probability is the same for both people, but they frame it differently. Here's the key insight. Rich people aren't actually risk takers. They're probability analysts. They study the odds. They make calculated bets. They understand that some risks have positive expected value. Poor people avoid risks because they focus on the possibility of loss rather than the probability of gain. But in doing so, they guarantee poverty through avoiding the one risk that has the best odds, investing in productive assets over long time periods. Paradoxically, being conservative and safe leads to financial failure. Taking calculated risks based on probability leads to success. This might seem obvious, but it's actually profound. Poor people rent. They rent their homes. They rent their time. They rent equipment. They rent tools. Rich people own. They own businesses. They own real estate. They own intellectual property. They own equipment. This creates a compounding difference. When you rent, the money you pay goes to someone else's wealth. When you own, the money you pay builds your own wealth. Let me make this concrete. Two people, same income, same city. Person A rents an apartment for $1,500 per month. Person B buys a house with a $1,200 mortgage, $150 property tax, $100 insurance. Total, $1,450. Nearly the same cost. But here's what happens. Person A's $1,500 goes to the landlord. The landlord builds equity. The property appreciates. The landlord gets wealthier. Person A gets a roof over their head and nothing else. Person B's $1,450 goes to building equity in their own home. After 30 years, the house might be worth $500,000. They've built $500,000 in equity. Same monthly payment, completely different outcome. But it goes beyond real estate. Poor people rent mental tools. They don't own their knowledge. They read a book once and think they understand something, but they haven't integrated it into a framework. They haven't built intellectual property. Rich people own their frameworks. They've spent thousands of hours studying and thinking, and they own the mental tools they've built. This is why rich people can jump into new industries and become successful quickly. They own a framework for learning. They own a framework for analysis. They own systems for decision-making. Poor people have to learn everything from scratch every time. Poor people also rent their time. They work for someone else. They get paid by the hour or by the project. Rich people own their time through building businesses. When the business generates income, they don't have to be there trading time for money. The business generates money independent of their time. This is the profound difference. A poor person works 40 hours and makes $40,000 per year. A rich person builds a business that makes $40,000 per year while they sleep. Same outcome, but the rich person now has 40 hours of free time that they can invest in something else. Ownership creates leverage. Renting creates a ceiling. Here's what's crucial to understand. You don't have to own a massive business to benefit from this principle. You can own real estate. You can own stocks, fractional ownership in businesses. You can own intellectual property. You can own the frameworks and systems you've built. But the mindset has to shift from renting to owning, from consuming to building, from paying someone else to build your own. This requires delayed gratification because usually renting is easier and cheaper in the short term. Buying a house requires a down payment and a 30-year commitment. Renting is easier today, but over 30 years, ownership creates massive wealth. Poor people optimize for today. Rich people optimize for 30 years from now. That's the real difference. Every dollar a poor person spends on rent is a dollar that could be building equity if they could shift their mindset from renting to owning. But that requires thinking in decades. Which brings us back to difference number one. This is where the psychology gets really interesting. A rich person receives income and immediately asks, "How can I use this to produce more income?" A poor person receives income and immediately asks, "What can I buy with this?" These questions seem similar, but they're moving in opposite directions. One creates wealth through production. One destroys wealth through consumption. A poor person gets a $50,000 salary increase. First thought, I can afford a nicer apartment, a better car, better clothes. They consume the increase. Their lifestyle expands to match their income. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it's a killer. Rich person gets a $50,000 salary increase. First thought, what productive asset can this fund? They might invest it in a rental property, a business, or their skills. They're not thinking about consuming it. They're thinking about producing with it. Here's what happens over 20 years. Poor person. Salary increases from $50,000 to $100,000. But they consume every increase. Their expenses expand from $45,000 to $95,000. They're still broke at the end, still living paycheck to paycheck, just with nicer things. Rich person. Salary increases from $50,000 to $100,000. They consume some increases, but invest most of it. Their expenses stay at $50,000. But their investments have compounded. They own rental properties. They own business equity. They own stocks. The gap between these two people after 20 years is approximately $2 million. Same starting salary, same intelligence, same opportunities. different mindsets. One consumed all income increases. One produced with income increases. The difference is compounded mindset. But here's where it gets really powerful. Once you understand this principle, you can reverse engineer your path to wealth. If you make $80,000 per year and you spend $70,000, you have $10,000 to produce with. That $10,000 can be invested. It can build assets. It can compound. In 20 years at 10% returns, that $10,000 per year becomes $575,000. You've built $250,000 just by consuming $70,000 instead of $80,000. The difference between poor and rich often isn't that the rich person makes more money. It's that the rich person consumes less than they earn and produces with the difference. Poor people consume all they earn. Sometimes they consume more than they earn through debt. A poor person makes $80,000, spends $85,000 through debt, and wonders why they can't get ahead. A rich person makes $80,000, spends $40,000, and produces with $40,000. Which person will be wealthy in 20 years? This comes down to a fundamental choice. Will you consume your income or produce with it? And this choice repeats every single month for your entire life. Make the production choice 240 times in a row and you're wealthy. Make the consumption choice 240 times in a row and you're broke. That's the entire difference. But notice that the consumption choice feels better immediately. You get something today, pleasure today. The production choice feels worse today because you delay gratification. But in 20 years, the outcomes are incomparably different. The question is, are you optimizing for today's pleasure or for 20-year outcomes? That answer determines your financial future. This is subtle, but it's revolutionary. Poor people are obsessed with fairness. They're obsessed with how much money other people have. They're obsessed with wealth distribution. Why does that CEO make 1,000 times what I make? Why is there wealth inequality? The system is rigged. These complaints might be partially true, but they're irrelevant to your personal wealth. A rich person doesn't care about wealth distribution. They focus on value creation. They ask, how can I create value for others? Because they understand something fundamental. Money is a measure of value. The amount of money you earn is roughly proportional to the amount of value you create. If you want to earn more money, create more value. It's that simple. Poor people want wealth distribution to be different without creating more value. That's like wanting to eat without growing food. It doesn't work. Rich people focus on value creation and let wealth distribution take care of itself. They create a product that helps 1 million people and charge $10. That's $10 million in revenue. Meanwhile, someone complains that they only make $50,000 and it's unfair. But they're not creating any value. They're just complaining about distribution. Here's what I've noticed. Poor people often resent successful people. They blame the rich for being greedy or unethical or lucky. But what they're actually seeing is someone who created enormous value. Steve Jobs didn't get wealthy through redistribution. He got wealthy by creating products that millions of people valued so much that they paid for them. He created value. The money followed. Warren Buffett didn't get wealthy through inheritance or luck. He created value by analyzing companies better than other people. He created value. The money followed. If you want more money, focus on creating more value. Don't focus on how money is distributed. Don't complain that the system is unfair. Unfair systems have created the most wealthy people in history because those people focused on creating value instead of complaining about distribution. Here's what's crucial. This doesn't mean the system is fair or that there aren't real structural inequalities. There are. But focusing on that is useless for your personal wealth. You can't control wealth distribution. You can only control value creation. A poor person wastes mental energy being angry about the system. A rich person channels mental energy into creating value. One is angry and poor. The other is wealthy and happy. The choice is obvious, but most people choose anger. Think about what value you create. For your employer, you create value for which you're paid a salary. For your customers, you create value for which they pay you money. For your community, you might create value for which you get social status. The wealthy are obsessed with expanding the value they create. They're always thinking about who else they could help. What new value could they create? What problems could they solve? When you think this way, money becomes a natural byproduct. You're not chasing money. Money is attracted to value creation. Poor people have it backward. They're chasing money directly. They're looking for shortcuts. They're hoping for redistribution. And they get neither money nor happiness. Rich people create value. Money follows. Happiness follows. This is why entrepreneurship is such a powerful path to wealth. Because you're forced to create value. If you create value that nobody wants, you go out of business. If you create value that everybody wants, you become wealthy. It's pure. It's honest. It's mathematical. This mindset shift from how much wealth should I have based on fairness to how much value can I create is one of the most powerful shifts you can make. Because value creation is unlimited. You can create infinite value. But wealth distribution is fixed. There's only so much money to redistribute. So the question is obvious. Do you want to spend your energy fighting over a fixed pie or creating new pie? This is the final and perhaps most important difference. Rich people have an internal locus of control. They believe that their financial outcomes are primarily the result of their own decisions and actions. Poor people have an external locus of control. They believe that their financial outcomes are primarily determined by luck, the economy, the government, other people. This belief fundamentally changes behavior. A rich person has a financial setback and thinks, "What did I do wrong? What can I learn? What should I change?" They take responsibility. They learn. They adjust. A poor person has a financial setback and thinks, "This is unfair." The system is rigged. I'm unlucky. Nothing I do matters. They give up. They don't adjust. They don't learn. They just wait for luck to change. The fascinating research on this shows that belief shapes behavior, which shapes outcomes, which reinforces belief. If you believe you control your financial destiny, you make different decisions. You study finances. You experiment with investments. You adjust when things don't work. You take risks because you believe you can manage them. Over time, these behaviors create wealth. Your belief was validated. Now you believe even more strongly that you control your destiny. Rich people get richer through this reinforcing loop. If you believe luck controls your destiny, you make different decisions. You don't study finances because you don't think it matters. You don't experiment with investments because you don't think you can understand them. You don't adjust when things don't work because you think you're just unlucky. You avoid risks because you feel powerless. Over time, these behaviors create poverty. Your belief was validated. Now you believe even more strongly that you're unlucky. Poor people stay poor through this reinforcing loop. But here's what's crucial. The belief isn't necessarily true. Both beliefs are self-fulfilling prophecies. The people who believe they control their destiny often do. The people who believe luck controls their destiny often don't. Because belief shapes behavior, and behavior shapes outcomes. I've watched this play out countless times. Two people get the same opportunity. Person A believes they control their destiny. They take the opportunity. They work hard. They learn. They succeed. Person B believes luck controls their destiny. They pass on the opportunity because they think it won't matter anyway. They never build wealth. Years later, person A is rich and person B is still poor. Person A says, "I was lucky to get that opportunity." Person B says, "They were just lucky." But they got the same opportunity. The difference was belief. The difference was behavior. Here's the deepest insight. You don't need to believe in yourself if you're willing to believe in a system. You don't need to believe you're special if you believe in compound interest. You don't need to believe you're lucky if you believe in probability and consistent action. The system is mathematical. If you follow it, it works. You don't need blind faith. You just need to understand that your decisions matter. Your actions matter. Your consistency matters. These things are within your control. Do you control the economy? No. Do you control interest rates? No. Do you control stock market returns? No. But you control how much you save. You control how you invest. You control your discipline. You control your education. You control your risk tolerance. You control whether you buy assets or consume. You control how much value you create. You control your time horizon. Most of your financial destiny is within your control. And even the parts that aren't you can control how you respond to them. This is the ultimate difference between rich and poor. Not genetics, not circumstances, but belief in personal agency combined with consistent action based on that belief. A poor person could read this entire script and say, "But I'm different. The system doesn't work for me. I'm unlucky." And they'll be right. For them, it won't work because they don't believe it will. Their belief shapes their behavior. Their behavior shapes their outcome. They've trapped themselves with their own mindset. But another person could read this and think, "These principles are within my control. I can apply them." They'll start taking action. They'll start seeing results. Their results will reinforce their belief. And over time, they'll build wealth. Not because they're smarter or luckier, but because they believed they could and then took action based on that belief. The mindset creates the action. The action creates the outcome. The outcome validates the mindset. Rich people and poor people are living in completely different psychological realities. But the reality isn't predetermined. You get to choose it. So here's where we stand. I've shown you 7 fundamental differences between how rich people think and how poor people think. Rich people think in decades, while poor people think in days. Rich people see money as a tool, while poor people see it as a goal. Rich people think about probability, while poor people obsess over certainty. Rich people own assets, while poor people rent. Rich people value income production, while poor people practice income consumption. Rich people focus on value creation, while poor people focus on wealth distribution. Rich people believe they control their destiny, while poor people believe luck does. These aren't small differences. These aren't matters of preference. These are fundamental psychological orientations that compound into completely different financial realities. The mathematical proof is irrefutable. Someone who thinks in decades, deploys money productively, understands probability, owns assets, produces income, creates value, and takes personal responsibility will become wealthy. Someone who thinks in days, hoards money, obsesses over certainty, rents, consumes income, blames the system, and relies on luck will stay poor. It's that clear. But here's what matters to you right now. Which category are you in? Not which category you want to be in. Which one do you actually inhabit today? Be honest. Look at your decisions. Look at your behaviors. Look at what you focus on. The answer tells you where you are. But the good news is this: mindset can change. Not easily, not overnight, but it can change. You can choose to start thinking in decades instead of days. You can choose to see money as a tool instead of a goal. You can choose to understand probability. You can choose to focus on ownership. You can choose to produce instead of consume. You can choose to create value. You can choose to take responsibility for your financial destiny. These are choices. You make them one decision at a time. one purchase at a time, 1 year at a time. Compound these choices for 20 years, and you'll look back amazed at what you've built. Don't wait for circumstances to change. Don't wait for luck. Don't wait for the system to become fair. Start thinking differently today. Make different decisions today. Take different actions today. That's how mindset changes. Not through thinking about it, but through acting on it. The rich and poor aren't separated by intelligence or luck. They're separated by mindset. And mindset is the one variable you fully control. So what are you going to choose? Are you going to keep thinking and acting like a poor person while wishing you were rich? Or are you going to adopt the mindset of the wealthy and let your financial reality follow? The choice is yours. The time is now. Choose wisely.